Welcome to This Explainer. Let's dive right into the thrilling, completely outlaw history behind one of America's favorite sports. You know, when you think of stock car racing today, you probably picture massive stadiums, huge corporate sponsors, and highly engineered speed machines. But the true origins of this multi-billion-dollar industry? They're hidden deep within the rugged Appalachian Mountains. It's a story born out of necessity, a healthy dose of rebellion, and, well, a whole lot of illegal liquor.
Ask yourself this. How in the world did an ancient survival tactic brought over from the old world eventually birth the high-octane tracks of modern stock car racing? I mean, it seems like a massive leap, doesn't it? Going from quiet, hidden mountain haulers all the way to the roaring engines of Daytona? But the thread connecting them is totally unbroken. It's a fascinating story of pure American ingenuity and defiance.
Here is the craziest part we're going to explore. The very early stars of the racetrack? They were actually bootleggers. These guys didn't build the fastest cars imaginable just to win some shiny trophies on a Sunday afternoon. No, they built them to literally evade the police. The high-speed driving skills and absolute mechanical mastery they needed just to survive and stay out of federal prison, well, that translated absolutely perfectly to the dirt oval tracks that would later become NASCAR.
Section 1, Scots-Irish Roots and Rebellion.
To really reverse engineer this whole story, we have to look way back, long before the automobile was even a thought. We've got to look at the fiercely independent Scots-Irish immigrants who settled the Appalachian Mountains in the 1700s. They brought distilling with them as a standard, everyday survival skill. But when the very first federal whiskey tax hit in the 1790s, it sparked a literal rebellion. Through the Civil War and right into the Roaring '20s, making untaxed whiskey totally transformed. It went from a simple agricultural craft to a multi-century stance against government taxation. It definitely wasn't just a drink anymore. It was a deeply rooted political and cultural identity. The foundation of this entire culture can basically be summed up in one unyielding phrase: make do or do without. In a harsh, really cash-poor Appalachian subsistence lifestyle, turning your surplus corn into easily transportable, tradable whiskey was just an absolute economic necessity for survival. Honestly, it cost on average 2 bushels of corn just to pay the freight to get 1 bushel to market over that rugged terrain. But if they distilled it, they could transport it way cheaper, store it for much longer, and get a significantly higher price. It was a no-brainer. Section 2. The Craft of the Still.
Okay, you have to appreciate the pure grassroots chemistry of how this process was painstakingly perfected over generations. This wasn't just throwing some random ingredients into a pot. It was a bona fide Appalachian art form. They transformed basic corn mash into 190-proof clear liquor using completely handmade components. We're talking a boiler over an open fire, a thump keg right in the middle, and this brilliant spiral copper worm submerged in cold mountain spring water to create rapid condensation. The stuff that came off this setup was crystal clear, seriously potent enough to strip paint, and then carefully cut with spring water to a super smooth 100 proof. Even the word itself, moonshine, kind of gives away the inherent danger involved, doesn't it? The criminalization of untaxed whiskey forced otherwise totally honest farmers into a secretive, nighttime cat-and-mouse game. Think about it. If you're going to break federal tax laws just to feed your family, you'd better do it when the law isn't watching, right? Under the cover of darkness and the light of the full moon. This whole dynamic pitted the mountain distillers squarely against the relentless federal revenue agents, who everyone in the hills notoriously knew as revenuers.
Section 3. The Cat and Mouse Game.
So, as the government is relentlessly hunting down these tax evaders, this wild, escalating war of tactics emerges. And this wasn't just a few car chases. It was a highly organized, super dangerous game of survival spanning generations. Moonshiners use natural geography to hide in incredibly deep, inaccessible hollows. Get this, in places like Ohio's Hocking Valley, they actually use the smoke from a massive underground coal mine fire, one that started during an 1884 labor strike, to completely mask their own distilling smoke. How brilliant is that? They also pioneered the thump keg for rapid double distilling so they could break down their setups and escape way faster. And they even used completely roadless towns like Lost Cove to load bulk liquor straight onto passing trains.
Section 4. Prohibition's Need for Speed.
Boom. Nationwide Prohibition hits in 1919. The stakes and the profits absolutely skyrocket. This ushers in the golden age of the moonshine runner, and suddenly they require an entirely new kind of technology, 7,100. That massive number is the gallons of white whiskey seized from just a single house during a 1935 raid in Wilkes County, North Carolina. It was the largest inland seizure of moonshine ever made in the United States. It just goes to show how booming and highly organized this illicit industry had become. They were producing staggering amounts of liquor, and they needed a way to move it incredibly fast.
To outrun the law on those twisty mountain roads, these bootleggers basically invented the modern stock car. They systematically reverse-engineered their everyday vehicles into tactical speed machines. Legendary figures like Junior Johnson totally mastered this. They'd completely strip out the rear passenger seats to maximize cargo space, then beef up the rear suspension to handle the immense weight of all that sloshing liquor. They'd armor the radiator with a thick steel plate to survive police blockades, and even carefully tape over headlight gaps to gain a crucial aerodynamic edge. I mean, there were literally engineering race cars before the race even existed.
Section 5. Bootleggers hit the racetrack.
So, Prohibition officially ends in 1933. Suddenly, these daredevil drivers find themselves with highly modified, lightning-fast cars, immense driving talent, but way less liquor to actually run. In places like Wilkes County, North Carolina, which writer Vance Packard famously dubbed the bootleg capital of America, these young men needed a new outlet. Guys who learned their insane, evasive driving skills by fishtailing around mountain curves to outrun the sheriff, they decided to bring those exact skills directly to the dirt oval tracks. It quickly became wildly popular rural entertainment, driven purely by pride, adrenaline, and of course, weekend prize money.
And this is the exact moment it all flips. The secretive outlaw culture of the Appalachian moonshine runner steps fully out into the public light. With the North Wilkesboro Speedways opening in 1947, organized NASCAR was essentially born. The exact same cars that were hauling illegal white lightning through hidden hollows on a Friday night were now competing in front of cheering crowds on a Sunday afternoon. That right there launched what would eventually become a massive American sports empire.
Section 6. Preserving an outlaw heritage.
Today, the legacy of these original moonshiners lives on, and not just in the corporate megasport that stock car racing has become, but in a really surprising modern revival of the spirit itself within Appalachia. Moonshining is woven so deeply into the folklore and music of the mountains that it represents a profound, unbroken cultural identity of independence. As that lyric from the traditional song Copper Kettle shows, this wasn't just a passing fad or some temporary criminal enterprise. This was generational survival. It was a way of life that firmly defined the region for hundreds of years. In recent years, changes in liquor laws have totally shifted the paradigm. For example, Tennessee allowed commercial distilleries back in 2009. Because of that, descendants of the original bootleggers are finally bringing their family recipes out of the woods and proudly setting up legal, taxed commercial distilleries. They're not just cashing in on a trend here, they are explicitly aiming to preserve an ancient heritage that was honestly nearly lost to time. It's an incredible transition from hidden high-speed chases to legitimate historical preservation.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder. The legal moonshine industry represents a really complex negotiation between a fiercely outlaw past and a legitimate present. So, the next time you hear the deafening roar of a stock car engine on a Sunday, or you taste a sip of legal white lightning from a mason jar, ask yourself, are you tasting the true, defiant history of the Appalachian Mountains, or has the rebellion finally been tamed?